surprise. You want that twist. But the climax shouldn't be just a random, ta-da, and it's done.
We arrived.
And here, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to risk offending people. And I'm really sorry, I don't mean to be. But did anybody see Wonder Woman?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Wow, we have a target audience of women, and 3 out of the 5 hands that went up were the guys. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, it just means I'm not going to talk about it very much. If everybody had seen it, it's okay. But Wonder Woman is a huge commercial and critical success for a lot of reasons. And I agree with the reasons why it was successful. But the big climactic fight scene at the end came from out of nowhere. It didn't need to happen. The reveal of the enemy was unnecessary and didn't fit the storyline because they weren't there. They were in a whole different, at a time period when you can't just go, boom, teleport, there I am. And to me, it actually ruined the climax of the story, where the climax was just, it was artificially fit in to make the character relevant for the DC universe.
Or open up a sequel.
That's the same thing, Marty.
Oh, sorry. I don't read comics.
But you understand storytelling. Okay, so make sure your climax, if at all possible, you don't want to do it that way. It should lead to sequels and stuff, but don't make it an anticlimax, and it shouldn't just come from out of nowhere. It should make sense, and it should be built towards, because you're escalating conflict, so it seems inevitable. So when you get to the last chapter and it's time for that giant fight scene, not only are you prepared for it, you've been waiting for it since chapter 3, when the bad guy and the good guy first saw each other, and you had the stare down, and it just built towards the big end with Rocky and, I was going to say Rocky and Bullwinkle, but that was Apollo Creed when they were punching each other. Rocky and Bullwinkle's a bad boxing match. All right, so keep it open for a sequel. You want to have some things in there that it could be done. Doesn't require a sequel, but a sequel is believable. All right, if you've watched 80s horror movies where the slasher guy gets killed at the end and he's dead, and yet they come back with another one. Yes, Jason Voorhees is perfect. Okay, the end of Halloween worked for having a sequel, and then Halloween 2 they blew him up. Along with Donald Pleasance, Dr. Loomis, and yet he was in the sequels afterwards too. And if you get blown up, that's usually the end.
It's really hard to Frankenstein people back together in actual technical reality.
Yeah. So try to write it so you can leave a sequel if you need to, but you don't have to.
Don't leave it wide open though for a sequel, like super wide, and then you never make one because people will come and mob and pillage your house. Same.
The villagers will come with pitchforks and torches.
The villagers will come and pillage.
We want a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Just
We
like
don't
crack
want
it.
that.
Yeah, crack it for a sequel.
All right, we're on to the worst part of telling a story. The worst part of being a storyteller. And that's why I'm letting you do it.
Edits.
Yeah. I actually like that part.
A misconception.
Do you have an editor or do you do it yourself?
Both.
Okay, because having an editor is a frustrating process
That too.
because you want to strangle them.
She's looked through my stuff.
I like mine, but I think both.
I was an English major. I like this kind of thing.
A lot of people assume that edits are like, the hard work of writing is over. Yeah, you just got to go back and read and edit. You guys seem smart enough to realize that's the hard part is edits. Edits take a lot of time. For my books each, I have to go through 3 full edits. This one is 425 pages on Word. Okay? That's a lot of reading. That's a lot of time. And
Double or
people
single
miss.
spaced? That makes a difference.
Double, but that's a lot. So that takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. First edits are just for, grammatical errors, mechanics, such like that. Second professional edits are where they like to rip you apart, and then you're about to cry. Why is her shirt purple? Why is the sky blue here? And you start questioning your sanity, like, am I really living? I don't know anymore. And then the third was just a polish, but still a lot of time. You edit yourself during the writing process. You edit after. I've gone back and read scenes just for thinking, I'm like, oh, why did I do it this way? So you're always, always, always going to be editing. Was that a similar with you? Do you personal edit before, during, after?
Yes,
As well.
you have to. I'm not a big fan, and everybody writes differently.
Exactly.
I'm not a big fan of stream of consciousness writing just to get it on paper and then you'll go back and fix everything.
Oh, I don't either. I do.
I want to have it mostly set up in my head before I put it to paper.
I have outlines.
But at the same time, your first edit is still cut, paste, rehash, cut out a storyline because it's taking you somewhere you don't want to go. The second edit is just like you said. And you have self-editing and you have editors. You have someone who is not part of the writing process that edits. And if you're going to write professionally, that person is not your mother. It's not your spouse, even though I rely on my wife to edit because if I'm off on a tangent, she's the
And I
first
have
person who will
friends,
tell me.
and that's fine.
But your editor should be someone who is literate and not the same as you. You know how we get along on everything? I would never choose you to edit my book. I would let you read it
Yeah.
to know if, because we are so similar, I want to know if the storyline works for you and if you like the scenes, if you see them the way I do, because that means my storytelling is consistent. But I wouldn't use you to edit because since we process the same, if I'm missing words or
The sentence,
missing on descriptions,
the sentence is a little uncohesive, please
you'll
fix
be
that.
in the zone reading the story and relating, and you'll miss that. What I want is somebody who reads. I would actually use her as an editor, even though I don't like her writing. We write very differently. But because we're
of that,
very different,
that's why you want
if
her to do it.
she read my novel and sent me a huge review that I treasure
Oh, thank you.
more than any other review that's been written about my work.
I was very thorough.
Hers, because it was very thorough and she was very explicit. I don't mean that in an adult way.
Yeah.
She was very explicit in what she liked and why she liked it. And to me, that told me that the story, that the parts that she pointed out were done correctly because people who didn't like what I like liked
Still
what I
got your
wrote
references
and understood and it hung together.
But I wasn't cruel.
You never want to be cruel.
I've had cruel reviews.
I had an editor that I had to call out and tell him if he ever sent me something like that again, I was going to meet him outside the hotel and pound him.
Some
Because you
editors
don't
are
talk
like
to me,
that.
growing
Finding
up
a
that way.
good editor is not easy.
And no, it's not.
I understand.
As hard as writing is, being a
Finding
good editor.
is
And
harder.
most of the time, people who are good writers are not good editors. And vice versa. Good editors can't write because they get stuck. Because everything that comes out can be revised.
500
And if you're a
million
really
times
good
you
editor,
do it.
you can't put a sentence down on paper because you have to change it and change it and
And
change
change
it
it.
and
And
change
again,
it.
oh wait, I could use that word instead.
But this is
of
why I find editing to be the most frustrating part of the process is because I'm an instructor, not a coach. When I teach martial arts or anything else, I'm going to show you what I want done, and then you're going to understand why I'm correcting you on your stance and your balance. It's because it works better doing it this way, and I'm going to show you that.
You're
And
teaching,
editors,
you're
by
guiding.
definition, can't write.
Yeah.
Which means those who can't do, I mean, that's what a critic is. First person to cook a meal, and the guy who's criticizing what you just made can't
Can't
do
cook.
it better. That's why I like Chopped on the Food Network.
Oh, that's a great.
Because the people who are judging that, the episodes where they're cooking, oh my God, watching Marcus Samuelsson and those guys in the kitchen is terrifying. I can barely make ramen noodles. I was a restaurant manager for a year, and I hated it because I'm an enthusiastic eater, but I don't like cooking. But that show is amazing because the judges there can all cook, and they have to put it on the line regularly enough that you got to take what they say. And if we're just, everybody thinks they can write. So when I send my work out for a beta test or an I'm kind of selective in who I send it to because I want feedback, but I don't want somebody who doesn't
Well,
know.
I would have.
Yes, and that's, if it's the I would've, it's not the correct edit because you're not writing the story. You're helping me tell the story better. And as a stage professional, I use audience reaction to know how to tweak and change what I say and do. And that's kind of what you use beta testers for, when they're reading to get input. And then your editor is supposed to help fix holes in the story.
Right.
And then the
Suggestions.
final polish doesn't bother me as much,
No, I'm fine with that
except
too.
the first novel ended up with some polished edits that were actually incorrect.
I had some too.
And we had, I think, three or four that Jill found in the printed version of my book
Me too.
that were not in what we sent them.
Yeah. In other
Because it
words,
made
they
me
fucked
look
with it
bad.
again.
Deb caught 2 of them already and sent them to me. You did this, you did this. I'm like, no, I didn't. I spelled that right.